This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Thanks for joining us. We are here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. We had a little bit of a technical snag. This weekend was a Celebrate Life event, I guess, call it, with sponsored by the RPI. So we have some interviews we were trying to upload, and that was what the problem was. Lefty went with me. He made it almost to Mike Huckabee.
Almost.
That's impressive.
I got to say, I was having a really pretty decent time. I mean, I like going to these things just to get a perspective and to kind of see what the other side is thinking about, talking about, arguing about. And I have some observations that we'll talk about a little later in the show. But my first general impression why I actually did have to bug out is, man, I can't be immersed in it for that long. I start to feel a little bit clammy. I start to kind of get the shakes. I had to get out and go home so I could read my pocket copy of the Communist Manifesto and feel better about myself, because all of this right-wing nonsense that was happening at the Celebrate Life event was just leaving me just sort of ill.
You mean people celebrating life? Event celebrating life makes you ill. See, that's the problem with the loony left over there. That's my opinion. Is you can't have enough non-life to make you happy. I don't know.
Well, hey, if some of the veiled hate speech that I was hearing at the Celebrate Life event, if that's celebrating life, then I'd rather not have any part of it.
It was full of love. we have interviews. They even came around and said, when you're talking about these things, you can't be judgmental, and you have to show these people a whole lot of love.
That's what they said.
Because they're misguided.
That's true. That's what they said.
And that's hate speech?
We'll get into some of that. We'll get into some of that a little bit later as well.
All right.
But we also know that I can't sit through an event for over 3 hours that used a lot of hyperbole, a lot of misguided statistics, and a lot of innuendo.
Statistics don't lie or misguide.
Well, then we'll talk about that, won't we? My CDC research that I did today, but it was hard to do all that, to sit through a lot of that stuff. But I will say this: the folks that we talked to, the folks that this show has been able to reach out to, and we have a relationship with at this point, I thought were really gracious, really good. I did, and you noticed this too, when we were going through it, and you introduced me and said, "Would you like to say a few things or talk to Lefty here?" Not a lot of people wanted to take you up on that.
Yeah, they wanted to run.
And I'm not a scary-looking guy. In fact, I was in a nice suit.
You were in a nice suit, but I will tell you the problem is we get ambushed and harangued so much by the left and with gotcha questions that really conservatives run. You know, you can get away with gotcha questions if you're a lefty because the media will support that. However, if you're a righty and you do a gotcha question, it kind of runs off. The other thing is there were a couple people there that I didn't know personally, like Tamara Scott. We're Facebook friends. We've met casually, but she doesn't know me. She definitely doesn't know you. What I'd like to do now is one of our supporters of our show is Representative Tom Shaw. We did an interview with Tom about his personhood bill, and we asked some pretty good questions of him. And I'd like to run that interview right now. It'll take 2 or 3 minutes. When we get back, we'll probably have a break. Then we'll come back and discuss Tom. You ready, Frank? Hi, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. We're here at the Celebrate Life event on February 23rd. I'm glad to have one of the keynote speakers here with us, Tom. How did you get invited to this?
Well, I was invited because I'm one of the key sponsors of House File 138 that we introduced this year. And this House File, if enacted into law, would provide equal protection for all innocent life.
How long have you been pro-life?
Probably for about the last 8 years, I could consider myself to be pro-life. Prior to that, I kind of bought into the notion I'm a man. I have no business in this argument, no dog in the fight, so to speak. I did have an incident that happened to me where I saw the effects of abortion, and I saw that it's not a product of conception. It is a person that is being murdered, and it had a profound impact on my life.
All right. There's been several critics of this bill, obviously from the left, and several critics from within the Republican Party. How do you respond to the criticism, specifically that it's going to leave it up to each county prosecutor?
Well, each county prosecutor is currently responsible for prosecuting murders and every other crime. There's currently a trial going on in Fort Dodge where the county attorney has charged a mother with first-degree murder because she allegedly murdered her newborn baby. So we're trusting the county attorney to prosecute in that case. Why would we not trust them to prosecute in any other murder case?
All right. Now, several of our listeners tuned in on, I believe it was a Thursday night, as you debated Craig Robinson, and there appears to be some bad blood. Do you want to address that here?
Well, there is a split within the life movement. I consider myself an abolitionist and not a regulator. There are several that want to pursue the same old policies we've been doing since Roe v. Wade was decided. They want to try to do things incrementally through regulation. I'm completely opposed to that because for 40 years we've been trying to regulate murder. It doesn't work. We need to get back to God's standard. God's standards is that life begins at conception. And when life begins at conception, that's when it is a person, and every person deserves, actually the Constitution demands that every person be equally protected.
Great. Thank you a lot for stopping by and talking with us. Good luck to you tonight. We're going to be filming your lecture. I hope you're not going to be too nervous.
No, I'm glad that you will be.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you much.
All right. I thought those were some pretty good questions. We'll be discussing that among other topics after the break. Thanks for tuning in and staying with us. We'll be back right after the break.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. What did you think of that? His response about the well, hold on. Let me rephrase this. The first segment we watched an interview with Tom Shaw. Basically, his personhood amendment states that a person begins at conception. That it's up to the local county prosecutor. Attorney to prosecute the crime of murder, and what did you have to think? What would you say to Tom if you had a chance for you sitting here now?
Well, I guess I have some pretty significant concerns with the idea of a personhood amendment or a personhood bill. This isn't an actual amendment, and personhood amendments that have been offered up to constitutions around the country have been roundly defeated, most recently in Mississippi, which is kind of counterintuitive. But I guess the first thing is that the representative talks about being an abolitionist, and what's the first kind of idea that is striking to me is that you have someone who's talking about abolishing a practice that has been confirmed as a constitutionally protected right by Roe v. Wade, by the United States Supreme Court. So how a state can come in and through its legislation define something as an unborn fetus as a person for purposes of a murder prosecution, I feel like flies completely in the face of Roe v. Wade and the decisions that have come down confirming it after the fact, which kind of limit the proof, saying that you can regulate abortion. States have an interest in regulating abortion, but you cannot make it impossible for a woman to get an abortion in a particular state. And so a lot of this legislation that's come down in the last couple of years, I think, is going to be challenged and found unconstitutional because it's inconsistent with Roe v. Wade and the cases interpreting it.
Well, but as you know, Roe v. Wade was specifically about the physical life of the mother, and since that time, it's been expanded through a lot of fiats, legislation from the bench that includes basically whenever a woman wants it.
But we know that's not true because the D&Es were outlawed. Were basically said there's no constitutional right to D&Es in like the 90s. Sandra Day O'Connor came down on that one.
You mean the late term abortions,
right?
Is that
yes.
Well, and that's part of one of the questions you asked is now I'm paraphrasing and I know I didn't get this exactly right, but basically since are we supposed to give up the fight for to change the abortion laws since especially
well,
I see. Yeah, you remember
that's
that?
what you're referring to. Well, I basically asked the question to see about some consistency because what I keep hearing from conservative folks about gun control is, hey, we got Heller. Heller came down. Heller, the United States Supreme Court interpreted the Second Amendment to say that each individual person has an individual right to own and possess a firearm. The Supreme Court finally ruled on it. Quit trying to take our guns away. What I'm suggesting is, isn't it inconsistent to then say, hey, the Supreme Court did come down on a woman's constitutional right to privacy and have an abortion, but we're going to keep hammering at it because we don't accept that particular ruling. The problem, and I'll tell you about the logical positivism of the Supreme Court, and this is sort of a fundamental philosophy that I don't think you can argue with it, is that our government and our Constitution has entrusted the Supreme Court not just to interpret what the law is, but to interpret what the Constitution in fact says, so that we have this unusual instance when the Supreme Court rules on a matter of constitutional law, it's not just making a decision based on facts, it's also saying this is in fact what the Constitution holds. If you say that it holds this and we agree, that makes it factually and logically true. So when Roe v. Wade came down and said that the Constitution provides a woman's right to privacy, therefore protecting her and allowing her access to legal abortions in this country, that is in fact what the Constitution says. And barring an amendment to an amendment that would negate Roe v. Wade, or barring the court coming back later and saying, actually, we were mistaken, the Constitution doesn't provide that, and overturning precedent, any law passed by a state that attacks that ruling from a legislation standpoint is in contradiction with the United States Constitution. That's how all constitutional law has been handed down since Marbury v. Madison.
So do you think it's a mistake because one of the big schisms in the Republican Party is, how do you actually roll back abortions? How do you get rid of the abortion? How do you do that? And the one tactic is to ask for the whole nut at one time, and the other tactic is to gradually push it back, the same way that Roe v. Wade gradually got its way, because it wasn't just out of the blue in 1972 that Roe v. Wade came out of nowhere.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Okay,
my thing with I think it's a unique way of trying to get it. But the problem is regardless of whether or not you like Democrats, you have to work with them, right? And my thing would be, my criticism of Tom Shaw's bill, which I do support. I support any bill that's going to help restrict abortions, because I believe life begins at conception. My problem with that is every time they introduce a bill that motivates the left the way this one's motivating the left, it always goes down to failure. And I guess that's my issue with it. I guess what I hear you saying is maybe a better way is try to get an amendment in there. So what advice would you give to a Republican to say, hey, listen, if you really want to eliminate abortions, this is how I go about it?
Well, I'm not in the business.
From a lefty,
I'm not in the business of giving the conservatives advice, especially about overturning abortions. So I'm probably going to pass on that question, my good friend. But what I would say is that the sort of prospect, like the Supreme Court has given the pro-life side, the anti-abortion side, wide latitude. It really has in passing certain legislation that restricts access to abortions. You just can't make it so difficult that the woman finds it impossible to have one. That's a pretty low standard. I mean, if the only law that gets tossed out based on this fundamental right that the Supreme Court identified in Roe v. Wade is, hey, listen, we're not gonna to disallow a state from limiting abortion clinics to one part of the state. Like in South Dakota, you can only have abortions in Sioux Falls, the biggest city on the far eastern side of the state, up against Iowa. You can only have them in Sioux Falls on like 2 days a week or something. And the doctors that perform them are flown in from Minnesota. There is not a single doctor who practices abortion who lives in South Dakota. The courts have said that's fine. You can restrict abortion that much so that if you are in Rapid City, 440 miles away or whatever it is, it's over 400 miles away from Sioux Falls, you have to drive the length of the state. And if you get there and if you run into traffic or there's some issue and the doctor's not going to be able to get you in that day, if you miss your appointment by a few minutes, you have to drive all the way back home and wait till the next week when it happens again. Or they may only have them a couple times a month. The courts have said that's fine. That you are still providing access. You're allowing it to happen, but you've restricted it down to a nullity. And that's what's happening in Mississippi with their regulations on the clinics.
So what do you think of Tom Shaw's position that you would try these people for murder? And the second part is what do you think of leaving it up to the county attorney? We have about 45 seconds, and I know that's big,
Sure, and I think that, and I'll probably talk on the other side of the break, I'll kind of get into this a little more specifically, but I think the two major problems, aside from the complete, the philosophy underlying the entire bill, the two problems from a practical standpoint is how the bill is going to square the conscience of a county attorney that says, I'm going to follow what the federal Constitution says and not prosecute anybody for murder because he provided an abortion that's legal under the U.S. Constitution, and not just that, how he's going to square all those different decisions by 99 different county attorneys, and also and I'll talk a little bit about this later, what rights are actually granted by this legislation.
All right, we'll be back right after the break. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Frank, take us away.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Thanks for tuning in tonight. You're listening to us on webcast1live.com. We were talking before the break about Tom Shaw's HF House File 138, which includes personhood. The specific problem, or not the problem, but the specific portion of the bill that doesn't require but leaves it up to the county attorneys to whether or not to prosecute it for murder is where we kind of left off.
Right. And there are a couple of practical problems that sort of arise out of this for me. And I haven't, I'm going to admit that I haven't actually read the bill. I'm just going off of what the representative has talked about. He's saying leaving the discretion up to county attorneys. And that makes a certain amount of sense because we trust the county attorneys with all kinds of things. And he's right about that. However, the first problem that I have with the way that he's crafted the legislation, the way that he's talked about it, is who actually gets charged. Do you charge the doctor? Do you charge the woman, or do you charge them both in a conspiracy? Also, we recognize inchoate crimes. What happens if they get together and the cops bust in and is it an attempted abortion? I don't know if he talks about that. Can you have an attempted abortion if you don't get the process started? And there are a lot of practical legalistic issues because so you charge the doctor with performing a medical procedure. What happens if which is legal in this country? You charge them with murder based on a legal medical practice. You charge a woman with murder for allowing this practice to be done upon her which is and it's a legal medical issue. The other practical problem is like there's a lot of evidentiary problems I think with charging murder, because murder, as we all recognize, is a very important charge. It's something that in this state it's an A felony, and you're entitled to 2 lawyers. You get 2 lawyers appointed if you're charged with premeditated A felony murder in the state. So the courts take it really seriously. So say that you're a woman who's going to see her gynecologist, and she's pregnant and has a miscarriage while she's there. It happens. I'm saying hypothetically speaking. I'm not saying that it's even like remotely a large percentage of people that this would happen to. Has a miscarriage while she's there, and someone knew she was pregnant. Now she's not pregnant, and she went and saw a doctor. Now, does that mean that the police have an obligation to investigate that as a possible murder? Because if like in the Pistorius case, right, where you have a woman who turns up dead because of accidental gunshots, the police have still charged him with the attorneys there have still charged with premeditated murder. So it creates a whole host of practical legal problems just from that. I'm not saying I'm not making the argument that it's wrong on its face. I'm saying that those actual practicalities of it make it a very difficult thing for me to ever see working in a real enforcement context.
All right. Well, and the other thing that I find lacking in most abortion restriction bills is really, if you're going to outlaw abortion, which I'm for, what are you going to do with these kids? How are you going to support them in the home? And, I mentioned that today on Facebook during this. Craig Robinson and apparently Tom Shaw are arguing back and forth quite a bit about his personhood bill. And apparently Tom has been attacking people. Did you see that at Celebrate Life where Tom attacked other Republicans or anything like that? I don't. Personal nature? Well,
not in a personal nature. He did say a couple of different things about how he wasn't going to stand. He was going to name and shame. Well, I can't say it now. I don't remember because we'd have to go back to what he said. But I do remember instances where he's not going to back Republicans down. That kind of
that
are
play
against
lip
him
service.
on this.
He did say that, but he's not the one that said name and shame. That was Chad Steenhoek.
Well, he didn't even say that. That's what he said. They're going to name Democrats who. Pro-life Democrats.
True.
He didn't actually say name and shame either.
No, he didn't.
He
didn't.
That's just the.
Anyway, Tom. Craig feels that Tom is attacking people, and I didn't hear him do that at all, unless it was in a private conversation. But one of the things that Republicans always avoid is, what are you going to do with these children? People have abortions for an entire range of reasons.
Yep.
That you can boil it down very simply to most of them, in fact, over 98% of them, are social decisions. Don't have enough money.
Right.
I don't want to be pregnant now. Whatever the decision, whatever it is, it's very small percentage that's actually life of the mother issues. And the problem is, if you're going to add these children to the population in a situation where mom doesn't want them, what are you going to do? Are you going to increase, adoption subsidies? Are you going to make it cheaper or more readily available to have an adoption? Are you going to provide support to the family? What if it's a woman who's, had an affair on her husband and gotten pregnant? That's a situation that's real.
Yep.
That happens. So now what are you going to do with the family? Especially since the man's got a vasectomy or something like that. There's nothing but destruction there. So how are you going to support these families? And that's the tough question that, Republicans don't ask. At the same time, Democrats, I think really need to stop and look at where is their soul? Isn't their soul about compassion and humanity? And if you're for abortion, there's not a way that you can truly have compassion in your soul because you're killing innocent life. That's my belief. So I think that the Democrats also have to start addressing, at what point do we start becoming better than the barbarians? Cultures throughout history have supported abortion. The Romans, the Greeks, the Chinese, and those are the ones that I know about. So these are great societies. At what point are you going to start addressing, this is a barbaric thing to do? So, that's my position on on, you know, the feelings of both sides of this debate.
Right. Well, I guess the first thing that I would kind of say, yeah, the social aspects of it, I don't think anybody really argues with. I mean, the Republicans and conservatives are really good about ignoring that, and I think that's true. As far as Democrats are concerned, the main issue, and I think you just raised it, is what will alienate a Democrat faster than you can say Ronald Reagan is when a pro-life conservative Republican starts saying things like, you guys are barbarians, you're for abortion, you have no soul, you have no class, you are making it, you're killing babies. And that kind of, and that's the rhetoric you always hear. You don't know, unless you're a fired up liberal, a pro-feminist sort of person, you don't hear the counter rhetoric of you guys are seeking to crush women. Like, you don't hear that as much, okay, or as loud as on the pro-life side. And you certainly don't have pro-choice people going around shooting people, as in happens very rarely on the pro-life side. So the rhetoric and the action on the conservative side is a lot more intense. Okay, I'm not even going to say bad, except for the murder part of it, but it's a lot more intense.
Well, but I think you're trying to say that, you know, pro-lifers run around and murder people.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Right. I'm saying that there are certain people who have taken it to the logical extreme that they want to go out and defend this unborn life from these people who are killing it.
And that's true, but no pro-lifer embraces that.
No, I mean, not the reasonable ones. There are a lot of pro-lifers that do, but they're the crazy guys that feed off themselves. Basically, the larger point that I'm making, though, and I'll just quickly add it up, and I'm not saying that that this is like sort of a response to the argument. I'm saying that to get a Democrat to work with you is to say, look, I know that you guys aren't necessarily pro-abortion. You're pro-choice. That you don't necessarily want, and this is the case for a lot of Democrats. I'm not going to include myself in this, but just because I don't want to speak personally about my own beliefs now. But there are a lot of Democrats out there that say, look, abortion is something that really makes me uncomfortable. The ending of a pregnancy, because it does have social ramifications. But we don't want to take that choice away from the person that's going to have to make it. So to say that we're pro-abortion is wrong and inflammatory. To say we're pro-choice is more accurate to our actual beliefs.
All right. We'll be back after the break. We're going to talk about being pro-choice versus pro-life. We're going to have a little bit of a bigger break thanks to our sponsors today, which allows us to have this wonderful studio. We'll be back right after the break.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave. and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You listen to us here every week on Tuesdays from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. Before the break, we were talking about abortion, pro-choice, being pro-death, pro-life, how you define it. What I always kind of chuckle whenever I hear somebody say, well, I prefer to be called pro-choice. Here's the thing about getting pregnant. Most of the time, you've already made a choice to engage in sexual activity. There are exceptions. Rape and incest, usually you don't choose that, all right? So we're not talking in this segment specifically about those. But when you're talking about social things that happen, when you decide to have sex, there's risks associated with that. And for me, that's when you've made your choice. Well, I'm responsible enough to have a baby now. And one of the things, I freely admit, my child, it's no secret, my ex and I got pregnant before we were married. We're both from Catholic families. She's from a small rural town. What an embarrassment. That's what it felt like. I'm embarrassed. But on the other hand, if we'd have had that abortion, I wouldn't have my son now. And as Lefty can attest, my son's my pride and joy. Things were tough. Things are always tough when you have a baby. It doesn't matter how good it is. There's never a good time for a baby. So my thing is when you start talking about being pro-choice, you have to start looking at the choices you got to get you there. If you're having unprotected intercourse, you're going to get pregnant. So at what point do you go, well, all right, maybe I shouldn't engage in this behavior? Now, I understand not everybody can be perfect. Not everybody is perfect. But during the commercial break, Lefty and I were talking about, well, you really don't, it can sound like a good idea at the time, and you do the best you can with that decision. But my issue with abortion is it's such a permanent solution, and that there's not a way to recover from that. And I understand, and Lefty can talk more about this, but there's a practical aspect to banning abortions, and there are many in number. I don't think anybody will agree that you should use abortion as birth control, but that's essentially what we have now in the U.S.
Well, if you look at and I kind of saw this, if you look at at some statistics, and they're not really, they're more conclusions than actual research, and so I don't want to suggest that this is the way things are, but there's an opinion out there that abortion is birth control, and what most women try to do, what most women sort of go out seeking to do, is to actually control their reproductive health and their sexual activity with the use of over-the-counter contraceptions, and aren't going around having unprotected sex, getting pregnant, and saying, "Oh, now I got a way out." Abortion is almost always a last resort for most women. I'm not saying that every woman is the same way. I'm saying that for the roughly 700,000 abortions that occurred over the last couple of years, I think it was 700,000 like in 2009. Like, it's been around that number for a little while, which has been a reduction over the last decade anyway. Still a lot for some people, I guess. But of those 700,000, the women that were asked about these abortions were saying, "Hey, we made this decision, we did this thing, and we were trying to be careful, and it happened anyway. And these are the things that we have to deal with now that we're pregnant." The thing is, and I think my biggest objection to banning abortion is that you're right, it comes down to choices, and it comes down to conscience, and it comes down to a choice based on your conscience. You made a choice based on your conscience that you're going to have, that this child is going to be brought to term and be born and have a life and everything. And what abortion, and that's based on your own personal feelings and beliefs. What a ban on abortion does is it takes those personal feelings and beliefs and imputes them onto every other woman who may not react or may not have those same beliefs and opinions. And because it comes down to a choice of conscience. If I'm a woman who doesn't believe the same thing you do believe, who doesn't believe that the fetus growing in my belly is a person, if I don't believe that, then a ban on abortion is essentially imputing a belief onto me, forcing me to accept a belief that I don't agree with. And that's where the individual choice, the reflection that everyone has their own unique conscience when it comes to this matter is so important.
Well, I see I see what your argument is, but I disagree 100%. There's a reason why we say, geez, theft is wrong and you get punished for that. Because some people might not think, honestly, that theft is wrong. They may feel entitled to it. They may say, well, geez, killing people is all right. Slavery is okay. There's all kinds of people out there. That's why we have to codify what is right and what is wrong. And in America, basically, it kind of boils down to, it's your free will. How does it impact your free will? Murder, it impacts your free will. That's in the Bible. If you read the Bible, they talk very much about, things that interfere with your free will are things you shouldn't do. Our justice system today talks about these are things that impacts other people's free will. You shouldn't do those, and you'll be punished if you do. It's the same thing with abortion, in my opinion. And I understand, some of my, I have a very dear friend. She had to have an abortion. Her life really was in danger. Her life was. It's devastated her. It's devastated her for 20 years now. And, if she could have made a different choice at the time, I think she would have. However, it's really a difficult decision. So I think everybody on both sides agree to that. Mm-hmm. My thing is I don't think it should be used for birth control. If the fetus is viable and you're healthy and you can work, it doesn't mean that you get, it's too tough for me now, so I'm going to have an abortion. Because that's really what a social thing is. You need to go, how are we going to support these people that are pregnant with no support? And I think that if the Republicans did that, we'd get a lot more leeway into the Democratic Party.
And I think you're out, and I kind of agree with that like 100%. But I still think that you run into the, and I know that you're going to blow your top when I start talking about equality. And I told you I was going to do it. You're going to.
All right. Let's hit equality after the break. Okay. Because we're right at that time.
Well, then let me just, before I get into that, a couple of questions that I'll leave you with is, so where does it stop? Okay. So now that you have a person, does that mean that every woman who has a cigarette while she's pregnant, knowing all the health risks to that person in her, have now committed an assault on that person? What are the rights that person growing inside of a woman has? Does it have the right to bring a lawsuit, bring a civil suit later after it grows up and develops? Hey, Mom, you smoked while I was pregnant. Now I have asthma.
All right. What's your second question? Because we really do.
That's all.
All right. So we'll come back because I have the answer to the lefty's question there right after the break.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
From From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right. Now, before the break, Lefty asked this question: What if you're smoking while you're pregnant, and how do you codify that as
drinking,
or anything else,
or hang gliding, or driving in a car? There are a myriad of risks out there that to a pregnant woman and her fetus. Okay, these things are real and happen. Are you going to prevent a woman from riding in a car while she's pregnant because there's a gigantic risk to that child or that fetus or whatever? Are you going to prevent a woman from smoking? How are you going to keep these things from happening? If you say that fetus is a person and you give that person the same rights when that baby is born and 5 years down the road, and you mentioned this during the break, it has ADHD now because of cigarette
smoking,
smoke.
Yep.
Can that child sue its own mother for smoking while she was pregnant?
Well,
in a tort action.
As a lawyer, you know, there's already been cases like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they've been adjudicated. The second part of this is of that question is you're talking about things that are beyond, you know, that do impact other people, but you don't end the life. You know, like if you're in a car accident and you're drunk and you kill a pregnant woman, suddenly that fetus is a human. Suddenly you can charge him with one murder if it just kills the baby and not the mom.
Which is something that George Bush did, which is also pretty controversial. I don't think that's still the law.
Well, no, I'm pretty certain it's still the law because a Catholic I forgot what happened, but the Catholic hospitals they botched some kind of something on a pregnant lady and it killed her child. And this woman is suing, and the position the church took is, well, it wasn't a fetus, right? And so they're being charged with negligence, not necessarily a homicide.
Is it? Well, I mean, would it still be a wrongful death action though? That's the thing.
Yeah, it's a wrongful death action.
Yeah.
So my thing is you know, there's going to be all kinds of things, and you can't codify that, but we can all agree that you're ending a life, right? There's still a debate out there whether or not tobacco exposure causes ADHD. There's a debate out there whether, you know, drinking a couple of drinks during a pregnancy is going to harm your fetus. There's all kinds of things out there that are subject to debate. But the bottom line is, if you go out and you actively seek to terminate a life, then that's something completely different than, you know, a person's bad behavior. My personal opinion is, if you're not doing everything you can do to have a healthy baby, you shouldn't come to me and expect me to pay for your child's health care, you know?
But see, that's exactly, you illustrated my exact point. Not doing everything you possibly can to have a healthy baby, okay? What does that entail? I mean, there's a lot, I mean, say you're a big sushi fan. There's a lot of mercury in a lot of sushi. Mercury can have a problem with the child, but no one's going to keep you from eating sushi if you're pregnant. Are we going to say that the only solution to limiting the number of abortions is an outright ban that makes essentially women brood mares of the state? Because that's exactly what it does. It forces a woman to carry to term a pregnancy that she may not want for what? For the state's benefit?
Well, the bottom line is, if you're talking about women and their choices, and again, we're not talking about incest and rape for the purposes of this show.
I'll stipulate to that.
All right. But that woman's made a decision, and that decision was to take the risk of becoming pregnant. All right. That's the issue in front of us. And if she wants to make that choice, then I believe that how she handles that should not involve killing somebody that has nothing to do with what her behavior is. You know, that baby is still paying the price for the mom's decision. And the truth is our legal system isn't set up so that the sins of the father pass on to the son. And that's really what we're talking about. If you want to talk about sin, right, which righties do. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about sin, that should be passed on. If you want to talk about fairness and justice, which the left wants to do, then you can't in good conscience go, well, all right, because this person behaved badly, we're also going to punish his children. I mean, it's codified. So from my perspective, she had a choice, and the choice was not to engage in the process that led to her pregnancy. I don't view women as broodmares for the state, but I do believe that if they have an ability to make that decision, they should also be able to have that ability to make sure they follow through on that decision.
Okay, so you're kind of, I feel like you are assuming that every decision to have sex is a decision to have a child. And that doesn't make any sense at all. As you've said about your own life.
But here's the trick. Every time you have sex, there are certain risks associated with it.
Unless you're able, and that's what makes me so crazy about the contraception should be the biggest boon for Republicans, because it gets you off the hook about this whole abortion thing. We're going to say, hey, let's support hey, you know what? Here, let's be reasonable people for a second. We know and we can absolutely agree that you will never eradicate extramarital or premarital or outside the family sexual relationships between human beings. That's never, ever going to happen. We know ourselves, as conservative politicians, lawmakers, and supporters, that we ourselves cannot hold that standard. That abstinence before marriage is never, ever going to happen. It's a utopian principle akin to communism, right? We can all agree that that's the case. So, because we want to eliminate abortions, we want to make sure that every baby that's born is intended to be born and is intended to be that pregnancy to be carried out, we're going to finance and we're going to support the greatest contraception drive to help prevent unwanted, unplanned for pregnancies. I feel like why don't the conservatives support that?
Well, there are some conservatives that do. The problem, and this goes back to the schism. I mean, there's basically at this point 3 parts of the Republican Party. The first part that we're talking about is the Christian conservatives, who believe that, there's a war against Satan, that the more souls you have, the more successful the fight will be against Satan, number one. Number two, we're talking about, I'm just saying that's where they come from. No laughing.
I couldn't help it. I'm sorry. And to my Christian friends out there, I didn't mean it was an involuntary thing, and not because of the belief aspect of it, not because, there are Christians out there who believe that, but no, the incongruity is what made me kind of snicker, because if God is the most powerful thing in the universe, why does God need every soul God can get to defeat Satan when God could just, kind of think Satan out of existence? It made me, I didn't mean to be snarky about it. I'm sorry. Carry on.
Like I said, some of this isn't as rational as what you would think. All right. But that's what it is. That's where they come from. My position about abortion really comes from knowing and holding life in your hands, and knowing that, as you have a baby that's been terminated through whatever means, whether it's a miscarriage, abortion, auto accident, which is, a possibility all the time, just simple fetal demise. You're looking at the baby and you knew that was a human. That's a human. There's no other way that you can look at it. You can look at an acorn and go, well, geez, is this going to grow into a tree? Well, you don't know, really. You just kind of think so. But when you're looking at a baby that's been demised, it's pretty straightforward. Part of the issue about responsibility is, if you're going to take those risks, I mean, go back to what you said earlier. Well, geez, every pregnancy is going to be, every sexual encounter is going to result in a pregnancy. No, but there's going to be the risk of hepatitis. There's a risk of herpes, HIV. You don't go out there anticipating, oh, geez, I'm gonna have these sexual transmitted diseases. That's not what you're thinking about.
And there are common sense contraceptive solutions that greatly minimize that risk. That's what over the counter contraception does for women.
But and then you're talking about RU486 and all that stuff.
I just want to make everybody clear, and you'll agree with this too. Not every fertilization results in a pregnancy, regardless of what you do with it. About 70% of all fertilized eggs never implant. Pregnancy is very rare, so we're not talking about something that happens a lot. What we're saying is, if that egg has been fertilized, that's a life. It never implants. That's a lot of wasted lives right there. And I don't see. And what about frozen embryos?
Well, and that creates a lot of problems there as well for the right. Well, I'll just be honest, for the right to life movement. There's all kinds of embryos out there. We throw away in America 400,000 embryos a year.
Right.
So,
but you're not a personhood kind of guy, though, is what you've said in the past. I mean, you support any bill that limits abortion, but as far as a personhood, like strictly conception, person, embryo, 4 cells is me, essentially. That's you don't take it that far. You just don't want people to abort it.
Yeah. The problem I have with seeing this is where I'm in a conundrum. That's the honest truth. I am pro-life from conception to natural death. I think it's horrific that we're throwing away 400,000 embryos a year. Especially at I think they stop it they divide it once and then they divide it twice and they stop at 4 cells. That's a difficult thing for me to reconcile because now you're monkeying with what God intended anyway. One of the things that irritates me the most about this is the argument, and we talked about this before the show during our technical glitch. A woman is allowed to make a decision whether she's going to carry forward that baby or not. However, the man has no such decision, and regardless of how it turns out, he has to pay for it one way or another. And I think that most people can agree that if a woman has the right to decide to have this baby, that the man also has the right to decide that he doesn't want it. If he's been clear from the beginning he doesn't want the baby.
It's tough for me to argue with that, not ever having fathered a child that I know about. Except from a social justice standpoint, like you've said, because the law recognizes a born child and not an unborn fetus. That's where the distinction is. And so, without talking about the philosophy of that, that's just we all recognize that's where the break is. But what I do know about men, and what I do know about fathers, especially deadbeat ones, is that they exist. And not only do they exist, but they do a very good job of avoiding their responsibilities. They do a very good job of keeping one step ahead of the child support collections people. That men who are of this caliber, who think that they don't owe anybody responsibilities, and the ones that actually are sort of straight up and say, I didn't want this kid in the first place. I'm not going to pay a dime for its care. I don't want a relationship with him or her. I want to go back to doing my own thing. That man has the perfect freedom to do that. Now, he will be punished if he's caught, but these are the same guys that get money under the table, that don't accept an actual paycheck even when they're working, that don't report new employers. And this is just as well as I do because you see the outcome of what that kind of man does to a child. You've seen that happen.
Well, and by the same turn, I've seen terrible moms.
Oh yeah,
so this is one of these things where I go back to one of the points that we both agree on earlier. If you're going to ban abortion, you have to put that in place, the supportive services.
Yep.
If the other thing is if a woman has a right to decide if she's going to carry that baby to term or not, then I believe a man who helped make it should have some kind of say in the process. I don't think it's fair that, it's just strictly a women's issue because it involves a man too. It does involve the woman's body. Nobody is denying that.
The biggest problem, and I'll just, because I see where you're going with this, the biggest problem that I think that a lot of people have, and the biggest problem that I have, is that there is the potential for if you give, and I'm not saying this is very light, and this isn't even, to me, this isn't even the best argument you can make for letting men have a say in a pregnancy, but the likelihood or the potential for a man to use that in an abusive way. I'm the father of this baby. I'm going to make you have my child. I'm going to make you go through that. I'm going to make you go through the experience of being pregnant with my kid not because I want to raise the child and then split afterwards. Not because I want to raise the child, but because I want to punish you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but one, that comes back to the typical left-wing argument, the men are crap. And
it does not.
It does, because that's the argument they use.
I'm not saying I'm not saying that it might be very likely. I'm saying the potential is the potential for that.
Well, the potential for bad behavior is there all the time.
Yeah, but that bad behavior is really, really damaging to a woman's ability to be a free, independent person.
Well, what do you think abortion does? It really interferes with people's ability to be a free and independent person then. I mean, my point about this is, if you want to step up and let's say that's the scenario, you want to make her have that baby, and then you want to blow afterwards, yeah, you can't do that. If you want to be a part of that, and you're going to make that woman carry that baby to term, then you're going to be responsible for that child up until the age of 18. Doesn't matter if you blow or not.
I say solely responsible. You get custody. She gets to walk away.
I'm away. I agree with you.
If the woman has to, and actually that might not be a bad solution, except that no woman wants to be if a woman doesn't want to be pregnant, it's a really hard thing to, that she's not going to accept that, right? But I guess here's the fundamental thing that this all comes back to for me, and what I've argued about with people, and there's a no-win argument on either side as far as I'm concerned, because I do not believe that the pro-life movement can exist without some sort of religious kind of religious sort of justification for wanting to ban abortion. I feel like that because of how the argument about life being an exception, there are people of good conscience believe that it doesn't, or that it's not a person or whatever, and protected things. Even Christians, the history of Christians and abortion is so skewed with so many different viewpoints throughout the years that you can't even really get a singular voice on it until the last 50. That it comes down to a matter of conscience, and it comes down to how you are raised and what your religious beliefs are, and no legislation should be imputed on someone that enforces one religious belief over another, one religious belief over non-belief. And so and this has actually been rejected in the courts before, so I'm not even making a legal thing. This is my own personal belief, because I believe that abortion legislation is fundamentally about religious principles. It should never be permitted to be enacted in a secular country.
All right. Well, now the secular versus Christian,
that's a whole other show.
That's a whole other show.
That's why I saved it to the end.
Now, I will tell you that I have been critical of the Republican Party for leading with social issues. For exactly the reason Lefty said. Whether you like it or not, even though I believe our laws are based in Christianity and Judaism, I don't believe that there should be any laws, respecting the establishment of or against religion. My thing about abortion really is it's murder. We already have laws on the book that says you can't murder. The other thing is with the Republicans, we need to start focusing on what many more people want to focus on. Most people won't ever have an abortion. That's the truth. Most women won't have one.
That's true.
So why lead with that? Most women
don't want one.
And most don't. Trust me on that one. Most don't. The other thing is, most people aren't going to be engaged in a gay marriage. So that's probably not an issue to lead with.
Also true.
And we're probably all not going to need welfare, although that's been changing here lately. So why lead with that? When we start looking at getting jobs on the table, start getting more manufacturing, cutting people's taxes, working man taxes. When we start working on the infrastructure of our roads on a regular basis instead of, election year basis, because you never hear about infrastructure until it's a presidential election. So that's my advice to the Republican Party. And I know I've been a failed candidate before, but I'm going to tell you, Karl Rove, you're driving people from the party. Christian Wright, you're driving people from the party. And what you're doing is both sides, all three sides are weakening the Republican Party. We'll be back next week. We'll discuss more things going on because this feud that appears to be brewing between Craig Robinson and Tom Shaw is really getting pretty interesting.
I didn't know anything about it until just today, but and what I would like maybe for next week, and I think that our listeners would like as well, because this is 3 weeks in a row that we've talked about why the Republican Party sucks, is
why the Democratic Party sucks.
Well, maybe not that, because
because see, that's the problem. A Democrat will never admit anything.
We don't.
Anything.
I would admit it. I would admit it 12 years ago. But just look at the scoreboard, big boy. we're sitting in the catbird seat right now. You don't have to talk about the Democratic Party too much, except for the stupid things they want to do with immigration, or the stupid things they say about the sequester, President Obama. So, I mean, there are a lot of problems I have with the Democratic Party, because I don't think they're doing enough, or I think they're doing things in a dumb way. But I think that we can maybe all agree that until the Republican Party figures itself out, I think that there really is an identity crisis in the Republican Party that's been brewing really since the Northeastern Republicans brought in Falwell and his boys back in the 70s. There's been this identity crisis. Are we going to be a ultra conservative to little c, right, ultra conservative, theocratically based party, or are we going to be the party of traditionally liberal economic policy, free trade? Are we going to be the party that stands up and says no to more socialistic government solutions to things?
So what's our show next week then? Just over that?
Our show, we're gonna fix the world next show.
Fix the world next show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be here next week, 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Doc and Left, and YouTube. Just put in a search Doc and Lefty. You can get all of our shows since we restarted. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week.